Welcome back to High on History. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Liz.
And here we are at Aqualithic, West Africa.
You're going to want to speak up a little
Am I talking a little too quiet? Sorry. So, this episode is slightly different than the way I did North Africa because 50,000 years ago in West Africa, the climate was pretty much the same thing, and the Atarians were
Wait. When you say the same thing is what? I forgot.
Oh, the climate was pretty lush. It was all rainforest.
Rainforest, green, swampy, wetland.
Lake Chad took up like 8% of what is modern day Sahara Desert.
Okay. It was huge.
Yeah, we're talking about like everything from north all the way to North Africa, all the way down to like South Africa was nothing but pure, beautiful, tropical Garden of Eden rainforest 50,000 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and the Atarians pretty much had all of Africa, all of Northwest, East Africa.
Okay.
The northern half of the continent, pretty much.
Okay.
So, that really...
Well, as I understand it, was really the northern... Okay. So when you say the northern half, like, I know that there were other peoples down in the more central and then also in East Africa.
Yep, so the Ontarians were part of Northeast Africa. There's a different type of people going around in 50,000 years ago in South Central Africa.
Right.
So the Ontarians kind of take over the north.
The north part.
Yep.
Yeah, like all the way down over to West Africa.
All the way to West Africa, down to like the Cameroon and that region.
Right.
And because of climate change around 20,000 years ago, then we get a couple divisions of where the people come from, and this is where I'm actually gonna actually get into the story. But before we do, if you really want to get into all the detail about the Atarian people and the actual climate of 50,000 years ago, go check out the last video. I go in all depths. Not the last video, but 2 weeks ago video. And I go into all the depths of North Africa 50,000 years ago. We're picking up in Central West Africa 20,000 to about 12,000 years ago now.
All right.
Yeah.
We are slowly but surely inching our way through time.
Yes.
And actually, you had something to say about that, didn't you? As far as, giving, what we're trying to do here in your intro?
Oh, yes. That we do believe that we should dedicate the proper amount of time and respect, but we are eager to move on through the Stone Ages around the world. And I believe the idea is that we are going after we are done with Africa, which I believe we each have one more episode of Africa.
Yeah, because we were gonna move on right around the 12,000 year mark and start following some of the migration that happened right around then.
Okay, so yeah, I think we each have one more video in Africa, and then we're moving up to the Levant, Southwest Asia, where we are going to meet the Hobbits. We're going to meet the Basal Eurasians, as well as other ghost populations of the world.
And you're going to explain a ghost population, what that is,
yes,
right? Yay!
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're going to talk about ghost populations. But before I actually get into my episode, when we ended last week talking about the Ashango bone, you told me that you had forgotten to talk about something that you really wanted to talk about. Did you want to take a moment to address what you forgot?
Yeah, I actually do. So, what I really felt like I failed to impart during last week's episode about Ashango was the actual relevance of finding the Ashango bone. It's not about what it is or what it might be. That's all very cool stuff. The quartz crystal tip that was used for writing, the fact that it's the size of a pencil, it looks like a wand, and it's clearly a mathematical tool. That's all very cool. But its significance is that it shows, in part, the development of mathematics at a much earlier time than should I say, old history, like, history used to discount that the invention of mathematics in Africa, and there's really very solid evidence now that shows that mathematical systems were developing in Central Africa long before Mesopotamia or Sumeria. No, they didn't have zero, but it was clear that they understood mathematics and used it.
So, I was having a discussion about the Ashango bone and its age and its relevance of its math with a friend of mine.
Oh, yeah.
And he had mentioned that the abacus was super old, so I started to kind of fact check that. The Ashango bone's way older.
Yeah.
Way older. The abacus is only about 6,000 years old.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So, if the Ashango bone really is a mathematical calculator, base 12, whatever it may actually be, as a mathematic tool, it is absolutely one of the oldest relics at this point from what I've kind of like
and it just so clearly shows I don't know if I remembered to mention this either, but the features on the people in Ishango were very often very archaic. And so we think of all these things like mathematics and so on and so forth as being, again, purely the realm of Homo sapiens. And Ishango is the fossils found there didn't, to me, fit very neatly into either category. It shows that the development of Homo sapiens, our spread across the world, is a long and complicated and interesting story. And I can tell you're just so excited to get into it.
I've got tea on this.
But these people who we describe as archaic humans are out there with a mathematical system of their own. Pretty much as you know, they're one of the places where, it's at least one of the places where math was born, if not the place that math was born. And I have not fact checked, but I did hear that, yes, Central Africa is where they think mathematics was actually born, and that wouldn't surprise me in the slightest bit.
From what I've kind of fact checked for this topic to kind of just like interact better on the idea, because I actually loved the idea. Yeah, I agree. Out of everything that I've been able to find, like Chinese, Egyptian, I did not look into seeing if there was a South American mathematic tool dating older than 20-ish thousand years. But at this point, as far as I'm concerned, Africa, South Central Africa, West
seems
Africa
to be the birthplace of mathematics.
Yeah.
And again, one of the reasons it's so hard, like there's a couple of reasons it's so hard to find out, more for sure, is just the acidity of the soil and the fact that this was all jungle.
Yeah.
And so, most of it got eaten by crocodiles that died 10,000 years ago,
Yeah.
So that's an issue.
Now, before I actually get into the archaic features of the hominids found in Ishango, Ihuru, and
I probably
Sri Lanka, you did kind of throw me off a lot. But I love it because at the same time, you kind of do tie into my genetic story.
Okay, great.
Because I did actually briefly mention Ishango for its archaic features, but those details don't get in until I actually start kind of talking about the significance of the genetics.
So let's jump right in.
But before I get into the genetics, I did actually want to address the significance of the climate change. I've been telling that story throughout my video, and I want to keep that going, the significance of climate change.
Right.
So here, 50,000 years ago, when we were looking at North Africa, we were looking specifically during the last glacial maximum, which was the kind of the peak of the last ice age. The whole world was under a lot of snow. Here, 20,000 years ago, we are now looking at the African humid period beginning. The Africa itself is about 6 degrees Celsius cooler than present-day temperatures, but the climate was more arid, sand dunes were developing, and savannas were being seen for the first time.
So the wetland is, the deep jungle wetland is starting to disappear, and it's starting to get drier.
At this point, Lake Chad has shrunk 95%.
Oh, wow.
From its original shorelines.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Lake Chad shrinks, so, like, everything gets super small, like, and this is where, like, we get a lot of the ghost populations. This is where we see a lot of these are where we get the holes, because when the land dries out, populations...
We move to water.
And populations get smaller.
Mm-hmm. And then because they are so much smaller, it's much easier for them to just disappear.
Random extinction happens.
Right.
And because, like you mentioned, the rainforest ate everything.
Right.
The soil was highly, highly acidic. And we also end up with, like, just a lot of climate. We get rainy seasons, we get the drying out, like, and a lot of things, like, a lot of the, like, remnants that we find in these regions is really surface discoveries, where up north we get in situ. In situ is rock. They are sturdy and it's encased in hard sediment. Where here it's wet sediment. It's up on the surface layers and not been suppressed and preserved at the bottom.
Right.
And this is where we have a lot of issue following the genetic trail as well. Like, I've been following all the haplogroups and the genomes and stuff like that. And...
Genomes. I love you, darling.
I love you too. So this is actually where I'm really sad that the DNA couldn't actually be preserved. We get a lot of preservation up in the north.
Right, the Ashango of 20,000 years ago, there's no living descendants of them now. And they weren't the only... And that's what you mean by a ghost population. No, ghost population is different.
Oh, yeah. But before we get into the ghost population, I can tell you're excited about the ghost population.
I am!
I do want to address a term that I am going to be using very frequently, and I'm sure you've heard me frequently use it already. Basal Africans.
Right.
So...
Now, I know what this means, but
I want to actually address it. So basal lineage suggests that there is no genetic cross species with Neanderthal. And so, like, to kind of, like, connect the dots here, the remains at Tolferot Cave from the last episode that I was talking about for North Africa actually suggest that the population are Basal Eurasian. Now, that suggests that there's a population of European Homo sapiens that never intermingled with Neanderthal. But now, Basal Africans are predominantly found in the Cameroon region of Africa with the haplogroup A00. And I'll get into A00 here in a minute too. So, like, the Basal population splits off from the Aterians, and I'm talking about the original Acheulean Terians. Now, the Acheulean were the triangle spear people a million years ago. So, when the Aterians split off and become the Aterians, 300,000 years ago, at the first Homo sapiens, we get the Basal Africans also splitting off because the Aterians, as we know, also mingled with Neanderthal.
Right.
But there are Basal Aterians. And here we are with the Basal Aterians. West Africans.
Okay.
Specifically, West Africans with the haplogroup A00 and similar haplogroups of A and B.
A00, that's Adam, right? Like
Yeah.
Like A for Adam?
Yeah, A for Adam. A00 is the basal mutation for the haplogroup of modern male Y chromosomes. And again, like I said, this mutation happened 300,000 years ago. But I'm going to stop here because I want to describe a ghost population, because this is actually going to become a very common topic.
Okay. First, you have to tell me what a ghost population is.
Yes. So a ghost population splits from the original haplogroup and dies out. It has a lifeline and then it just vanishes. Kind of like the people of the Trollfork Rock Cave, how they were around for 10,000 years and then just vanish and there's no modern descendants.
Okay, so that is the same as the Ashengo people. They're
Yep.
a ghost population.
Yes.
They showed up, they were kind of their own thing in the record, and then they're gone.
Just completely gone. But the cool thing about ghost populations is they do leave modern linkages. Up to 2 to 19% of modern West Africans carry DNA of ghost populations.
Okay.
Yeah, now they are ghost populations, so we don't know where they come from or who they come from.
Right.
But they do show up anywhere from 2 to 19%. It's kind of like how the 40% Neanderthal shows up in Western European descendants.
So these are, when we say ghost populations, we're talking about just there are places where the genetic record isn't filled in yet, so we can't even say where some of that genetic material is coming from, right?
So
is that essentially it?
To truly give a definition, a ghost population is a bunch of different haplogroups, and a haplogroup is a mutation, that appear in the modern gene pool from a population that bottlenecked. So it thrived for a little bit, got cut off because of the significance of the climate, like we talked about.
Right, okay.
And then it just died out. Completely, just unfortunately no surviving culture today. And that's what happened. It flourished for a little while and then just vanished. And that's where a lot of the holes are.
Right.
In our early archaic hominid species, is they bottlenecked, thrived for in groups of hominids, and then disappeared. There's a lot of intermingling. Where did this come from? Where did that come from? Well, this is why we have a lot of mysteries as the ghost populations.
Because if they were anything like the tribes that we see later,
Yeah.
Then you would think that you've got your tribal trade, you've got your intertribal marriage, and certainly, of course, at times you've got kidnappings and so forth.
Yeah.
But generally,
And
tribal life is it kind of, no matter where you're seeing it in the world, it has these things in common. They're not typically super isolated.
Yeah, and that's why some of the modern DNA does carry over in Western Africans. Like I said, there's 2 to 19%
Right.
DNA that does carry over from these now extinct populations.
Yeah.
So
The culture is gone, the people are gone, but
their
pieces of
DNA
them
still
live on,
show
yeah.
up in modern humans.
just like Neanderthals do.
Just like Neanderthals do. So now that I've addressed ghost population and basal Africans, we're finally going to move on to A00. I've been talking about Adam. I've been super pumped about this. So first and foremost, like I said, it was a mutation that occurred 300,000 years ago, and it was actually discovered in 2013 by the great-grandson, which I could not find his name, of Albert Perry, a born slave of South Carolina sometime around 1819 to 1827. I couldn't find an exact birth year.
So his grandson.
Great-grandson.
Great-grandson.
Did a DNA test in 2013.
Okay.
And when his DNA test results came back, A00 was discovered. Yeah, I know. Super recent discovery. So when the geneticist couldn't place his lineage, hundreds of African descendants were tested. I mean, when I say hundreds, I'm talking thousands, actually. Like, I mean, as if you had African American, born like in Africa, modern descendants, tribal people were gone out and swabbed and tested. Like, this became a search because they actually couldn't place his lineage, and this was something new. So they went out looking for this DNA. And so the highest concentration of A00 in modern descendants is in Cameroon and Nigeria in the tribal people. And A00 is the oldest of the Y chromosome types. Now, there are different types of Y chromosome, but A00 is the oldest. Only shows up in African descendants, specifically those of the Cameroon and Nigerian descendant.
So Central Africans.
Yeah. Yeah, oldest Y mutation. Now, earlier...
So literally the first...
Yeah.
Homo sapien men.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And they're kind of, and they're still around.
Yes. Yes. They're still around to modern day.
Amazing.
And now, any Y lineage that is not of this African origin can either be a C, D, or E. C and D are kind of exclusive to India and Asia.
Okay.
And then E is more for the European lineages. Oh, wow, huh. E for European, huh. I just put two and two together! Yes! That's funny. Okay, so now the origin theory of where A00 comes from, it can be kind of picked at, kind of like hypothesized, so to say, from the Sri Lanka, Iholaru, which are sites that I'm going to be talking about here in a little bit. They show the evidence of possible hybrid modern humans mixing with ancient early African hominids. So like kind of how you mentioned that...
the archaic humans.
Yeah, like how you mentioned that Ishango had interesting, almost archaic features.
Yes.
Well, some of the oldest known human fossils in both Iholaru and Ishango show unexpected archaic features that create a more complex evolution story to modern humans.
So these are probably parts of that ghost population.
Absolutely. And when I actually address the Cave of Ashes, or Iholaru, which I will address it as the Cave of Ashes just because it's easier for me to say, and
Hey, you've been doing really good, though.
I've been trying to be really good. But when I get to the Cave of Ashes, I will go in depth of what's significant about these hybrid features. But so, a fun little fact about haplogroups, as we've discussed, haplogroups are mutations that happens in your chromosomes. Now, these mutations actually happen during meiosis. Meiosis happens at a very specific point in cell division. This is when the little spermie goes and meets the egg, and then the cell division starts happening. You get 2 divisions. Total of 4 cells. You itty bitty 4 cells. Okay? So, at this point, each cell has 1 copy of each haplogroup, and they kind of like... Go Google it. Go look up what meiosis is online, because the image is actually really cool. It shows how the chromosomes split and patch each other up to make your DNA. That's how you... Yeah. So
you're getting 2 from your mom and 2 from your dad?
1 from your mom, 1 from your dad. Yep.
But those turn into 2 cells each.
So, no, your haplogroups are your chromosomes. You get 1 set of chromosomes from your mom.
Right.
1 set of chromosomes from your dad, which total out to be, I think, 23 chromosomes total?
Yeah, well, where did we get to the 4 cells?
that's when the egg divides into 4 cells.
Okay, but...
And at this point of when we get 4 cells, inside the cell is where your chromosomes are.
Oh,
your
okay.
chromosomes are your DNA and your mutations that happen on your DNA.
Now, do all 4 cells have the same haplogroups?
Yes.
Okay.
And
that was what I was
okay, that's
about.
what you were trying to figure out. Yes.
Yeah.
All 4 cells have the same haplogroups. And they're doing pretty much whatever the same split are. So, like, the best way they kind of, like, show the image, it's kind of like 2 little V dudes that look, kind of like that. And then on each set of them, like, one section would be cut off, and then the other section would, from a different set, would be a different color. Like I said, just go look it up online. We haven't got to the point of where we're showing images yet, and we'll get there. But anyways,
the camera fine.
Yeah, right. But anyways, so now Y chromosome will not often recombine with X, but the Y chromosome is most common to pass down mutations from father to son, such as sickle cell anemia. Now, sickle cell anemia doesn't show up until about 7,000 years from now, like present day now.
Okay. So 7,000 years ago.
Yeah, 7,000 years ago. In the same region I'm talking about right now. But anyways, like I said, we'll come back to sickle cell anemia. Now, if X and Y do end up recombining during this phase of meiosis, so when you are at your 4-cell existence of life, if X and Y merge back together, which happens 1.7% of the time, that is when we end up with people who are intersex gender, and that is as common as red hair.
Oh, so, I mean, pretty common.
Yeah. So
almost 2%.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But now, I just kind of wanted to explain how the mutations happened. It happens during the tiniest existence of your life, when you're pretty much your 4 cells, and all of your information is getting crossed over.
Because everybody starts off as a female.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Now, we've mentioned a couple times A00 Adam never met mitochondrial Eve. Now,
mitochondrial Eve's from East Africa.
Correct. So, now, Eve is believed to have originated from Central East Africa 150,000 years ago, leaving roughly a 30-year overlayer where our modern mother and father did possibly walk the earth at the same time. Now, did they ever meet? Absolutely not. But Adam and Eve did actually walk the earth at some point.
And maybe walked it at the same time.
Yeah.
That's unlikely.
But there's a 30,000 year layover on that. Now, I also found a really cool bit of information about the pygmy populations of Africa, and they tie into Sri Lanka as well. So now this mutation appears 60,000 years ago on both X and Y chromosomes, making it a dominant trait.
Interesting.
Now, for pygmy men, it is identified as capital B 2 lowercase b. And on women, it is capital L 1 lowercase e 1 capital A. Like I said, haplogroups have a lot of crazy numbers once we get into depths of like the differentiations. And it doesn't really matter at the, for these two, other than knowing that they have showed up on both X and Y 60,000 years ago.
Okay.
And presently, these two chromosome groups have diverged into 3 different geographic groups. Now, B2B can also appear in the Khoisan people that you've talked about in previous episodes.
Yes.
Yes. Now, the reason why...
So the Khoisan have some pygmy DNA, is that what I'm understanding?
So, kind of, sort of, yes. Modern Khoisan people do carry on some of the pygmy DNA, and that's because pygmy women would marry into the Khoisan and Bantu people.
Okay.
Now, the way that worked, believe it or not, there are some really good Anunnaki videos that actually describe this way better than what I'm probably going to do. But the way it kind of works is the woman was able to carry the seed from the man, but the man was not able to fertilize, the pygmy man was not able to fertilize the non-pygmy woman.
Right, but it does work in reverse.
Yeah.
This actually, this was something that I actually found out. I was going to cover it at some point in one of the Way Further Back videos around the Blombus Cave time, I think. But yeah, in case you have ever wondered if all these archaic hominids were running around mingling, how is it that they could be mingling? We know that, we can't necessarily mingle outside of our species.
Right.
So how is that happening? The women. It was happening through the women.
Yep. Absolutely.
So that's how that happened.
So now, the Proto-Bantu people originated in modern-day Cameroon and Nigeria, where they developed agricultural practices before migrating eastward. But now, during the Kiefian period, which is that sweet 20,000 year mark to like 15,000 year mark, the Khoisan people were averaging 6'8".
Wow.
They were giants. Like, that was just the average height of men. Their average women were like 6'2". They were giants. So now, when they started mingling with the pygmies, that changed their height. On both spectrums. And
really?
Yeah. So, like, some of the, like, male and female children were getting shorter or taller, whichever perspective you wanted to look at it.
Interesting.
Yeah. And yeah, that was kind of so now...
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So now my current research with, like, the way weather and, like, the environmental conditions, it kind of tells me, like, how the groups of the pygmy people split. There's 3 different modern geographic groups, which I would like to say they are the Bambenga or Mbenga of the Cameroon, Gabon, Republic of Congo, and Central African Republic, the Bambuti, or the Mbuti of the Congo Basin, and the Batwa, or the Twa of the Rwanda, the Burundi, the Republic of Congo, Tanzania... Burundi, sorry, my bad.
No worries.
Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, Angola, and Namibia. I'm not the best at pronunciations, but we address that in almost every video.
We should have looked this one up too, but I think it's Namibia.
Namibia? I don't remember.
That's pretty.
Yeah. So, now, I talked about a couple different weird things. I've talked about the ghost populations, I've talked about Y chromosome, and I've also talked about the pygmy populations. They're all kind of weird groups, right?
Well, I mean,
they're all
weird is a...
Well, so I guess what I'm trying to get at is, what's the connection with all of them?
Sri Lanka?
Yep, Sri Lanka, and also Ihalaru Cave, or the Cave of Ashes. Now...
Ooh, that sounds cool, the Cave of Ashes.
The Cave of Ashes. Dun, dun, dun. Anyways, I've been so excited to talk about Sri Lanka. This is where we're starting. Now, a rock shelter is nestled behind a waterfall in a caldera of Mount Bofuku Umbu. I forgot how I pronounced that. Shoot. I actually forgot how to pronounce that. I looked it up and everything, and now it's like, oh, I don't remember. But anyways, it's in a volcano. Go figure. It's the Bafuku. Bifoku? I don't know. I don't remember.
Oh,
I forgot.
No.
I totally forgot all of a sudden.
We've got to do the pronunciation
I know,
guides.
I've got to remember to start looking up pronunciation guides. Anyways, this is a cavern that's about 50 meters wide and about 20 meters deep. It's been occupied for 30,000 years, up to about 400 years ago it was occupied. And like,
it's
being
in the
used.
caldera of a volcano.
Yeah! Behind the waterfall.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
I know. Dude, I was looking up pictures. I wish I could share them with you guys. We need to get on that. But anyways, at this beautiful location, we find over 500,000 stone tool fragments. Over 1,000 different pottery shards from the ancient women of present-day Mali, dating back to about 7,000 years. When we come back to the 12,000-year-old mark, that's when I'm really going to get into Mali pottery. Or you can take over Mali pottery.
I was super obsessed with the pottery thing.
So we might switch that up and you might get to talk about Mali pottery. But the pottery at Sri Lanka dates to about 7,000 years old. There was also 18 different skeletal remains, and most of them were children. Now, we don't know why. I guess anyone's guess is as good as anyone's. But also at Sri Lanka, this is the possible origin and the diffusion of the Bantu culture. Like, the Bantu people, who were one of the first agricultural, pastoral types of people who started farming in Africa. They're like one of the first nations or first peoples to actually start agricultural practices of like cultivating crops.
Right.
And keeping cattle.
And they started
animals.
when?
Because I didn't quite look into all of the details, I saw anywhere from Proto-Bantu starts 30,000 years ago, modern Bantu expansion ends around 4,000 years ago.
Okay. But the period where you were talking about how the agriculture, when did that start?
That started, I want to say, in the pastoral period, which is 10,000 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're early modern Bantu by then, and they're expanding, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, at Sri Lanka, the quartz industry. This is before microlithic quartz. The actual quartz
More industry.
Yeah. The quartz industry is the oldest industry. Like, here it's stated anywhere, it's older anywhere else in the continent. Like, we've talked about quartz industry throughout most of the continent at this point, but they say specifically focusing on the quartz tool. We've talked about chert, we've talked about obsidian, we've talked about...
We've been way further back in history. We were talking about, well before the microlithic era, the trading of stone, both
the quartz industry.
Like I feel like it's one of those things where we don't use the word industry while we're clearly looking at industry.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, but anyway, I'm sorry, not to distract from your point.
Yeah.
The quartz industry.
They claim that it's dated to be like the oldest microlithic quartz industry here in the Sri Lanka
Wait, I
area.
thought you said it was before the microlithic era.
Oh yeah, before the microlithic. Sorry, I have microlithic typed here. I did not get to edit this entirely. Long week.
Oh my goodness, so
It was
long.
a great week.
Yeah.
Great long week. So, anyways, at Sri Lanka, we were talking about Adam. Well, when we were talking about Adam, I brought up this site here at Sri Lanka. And here we have some of the possible origins of the earlier mutations appearing here in the Cameroon region. This is where, like I said, a majority of today's population has this haplogroup. So, majority
So the Bantu people are where Adam is from?
That is the speculation, and because it shows up in the indigenous Cameroon and Nigerian people more regularly than anywhere else in the world, unless you're a descendant of that region.
That is amazing. 'Cause
Yeah.
I have been fascinated by the Bantu people for a long time, but specifically the way that you can trace a bunch of other cultures back to them. Like, if you were looking at a place and, like, what, to me, if I'm looking back and trying to find the first civilization that I can, like, very clearly see has all the elements of civilization, including, like, exploration, it really feels like the Bantu.
I can definitely agree with that, especially, like I said, they were one of the earliest pastoral peoples. They were one of the first agricultural peoples, and that started somewhere between 30,000 and 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I definitely do agree with you.
Their language spread
far and wide.
Far and wide, so much further than you would think. It shows up in South America, it shows up in Japan, it shows up in all the Asian countries. It shows up in China. It shows up in India, I think. The pieces of the Bantu language exist everywhere.
Yeah. So, out of the 18 remains, only 4 entire genomes were able to be tested. Now, due to the climate, the environment, most samples were not viable for tests. But 4 samples provided the entire, let me emphasize that one more time, the entire genome sequence.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Now, the test subjects were 2 male and 2 female bodies. So we were able to get a good 50-50 mix on this. All 4 of them were related as either aunt and uncle or niece and nephew.
Okay.
Separated by 5,000 years.
Oh my god.
What? Yeah, right? So 2 of the bodies were dated to be 8,000 years old, and 2 of the bodies were dated to be 3,000 years old. But they were buried together ceremoniously. Ha! Got it.
Ceremonially.
Yeah, ceremoniously.
Yeah, ceremoniously.
So I don't remember exactly like how they described it, but the bodies were buried together in a ritualistic way. And 2 of the children were aged roughly 4 years old. One was 8 and the other was 15.
Okay, so both the older bodies and the younger bodies were all arranged ceremonially?
2 of the bodies were together. So, 2 sets of bodies were together.
Right, I know that. And all 4 of them were arranged ceremonially, even though 2 of them had died 5,000 years earlier. But they were all arranged the same way?
On top of each other, so...
And they were related. Yeah, see, that, the notion that most any of us would know where our ancestors were buried 5,000 years ago is,
It blew my mind.
Yeah, that is mind blowing.
Yeah. So anyways, one of these males had the exclusive A00 haplogroup.
Okay.
These 4 sequences...
So, Basil African?
Yes. Yes. So these 4 sequences provided the first entire genome sequence for an ancient population. Unfortunately, this population bottlenecked and became a ghost population.
Bummer.
Yeah.
But, I mean, obviously parts of it still show up.
We've got the entire sequence for them.
That is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is really cool. And so they are most closely related to the modern day rainforest hunter-gatherers, indigenous people of Cameroon. And the skeletal remains showed also archaic hominid features. So now I've mentioned 3 sites. The Cave of Ashes, we just covered Shamonka, and I did mention Ishengo, and you beautifully brought us to that point.
We kind of skipped the Cave of Ashes to do Sri Lanka, didn't we?
No, I'm doing this in the order that I wanted to do this in.
Oh, okay.
We are about to get to the Cave of Ashes as we speak.
Woohoo!
So, now, since we discussed Shango and Sri Lanka with the archaic features, here at the Cave of Ashes is where we get a really amazing skeletal find. So, before getting into the hominid remains, I do want to point out that this cave is in Nigeria, and it was discovered in 1961 during a large-scale land surveying detail near Ondo State in, obviously, Nigeria. At this location, we see mass production of African olive, and the mass production of the oil is dating to about 11,000 years old.
Wow!
Pottery is found to be 12,000 years old at this cave, and nearly a million stone tool artifacts as well.
Oh, wow. So then it was inhabited for a long time.
Yes. Now, a few years after the cave was discovered, in 1965, a partial skeleton was discovered, buried under a thin layer of soil. And if you don't remember what uranium-thorium dating is, you can always go check out the video. But uranium-thorium dating was used to find the age of the remains. This hominid, 16,000 years old.
Oh.
Yeah. And now, I don't entirely know how they were able to use uranium-thorium dating for it, but that's where they used the decay of uranium-230 to the ratio of growth of 230 thorium. Fact check me by going to the last North African video. So, now, I made a nice little bulleted list of the details of the remains. This specific skull was so beautifully intact. I mean, it was a full skull. It was not smushed. It wasn't busted up. Like, so many skulls are missing pieces. This guy was kind of missing his teeth, whatever, cool. But the skull was solid.
No, that is. I mean, they're almost always missing something. 12,000 years ago is a long time for bone to hang out and be not broken.
Yeah, right. So now the cranial vault, which is the inside of your skull, which is where your brain kind of like hangs out. It was long and low, so kind of like flat and elongated.
Interesting.
Yeah. The frontal bone, which is just your forehead.
Right.
Had moderate recession, but the brow ridge was prominent.
Okay, so it had the Homo sapien crown, but then the slightly more prominent ridge that we see with
archaic humans. Yes. Now, the nasal root, so your nasal root is the bone that holds all your cartilage together.
Right.
That was considered narrow, and it also suggests that the nose had a flat bridge, which is a trait of modern Homo sapiens.
Right.
Now, the mandible was considered to be masculine, and from what genome sequencing was able to be done, it does confirm that the skeleton was male. So the chin was pronounced. Now,
that is a distinctively Homo sapien
feature. Most early Archaeans had the best way I could describe it is go look at chimpanzee or gorilla. There's no chin line. They don't have the prominent feature of a jaw or this part.
You can see it in the skeletons too. It looks
kind of like
the overbite is further out, and then the whole chin is set back.
Now the humerus, the radius. Now your humerus is up here.
Oh.
Yes, this is your humerus.
Okay.
And then your radius is one of these bones.
Okay.
The other one, I believe, is the ulna. Yes, ulna. Tibia and fibia down here, your femur is here.
Okay.
Mind you. So now the humerus and the radius, as well as the femur, and I don't remember which bone it was down here because my dingleberry bum decided not to write it down. But 4 of these bones from your arms and legs showed robust features with a very thick cortical bone tissue. Now, the cortical bone tissue is actually what makes your bone strong.
Oh, okay. So say thick bones.
Thick bone, which is a trait of archaic humans.
Okay.
Now, this hominid was determined to be 165 centimeters tall, which puts him about 5'4".
Oh, quite average.
And he was estimated to be about 30 years old when he died. Yeah. Now, the ocular structure and the facial features that we've been talking do show prominent Proto-Western African features. But this also implies a transitional archaic hybrid possibility because of the lack of certain features, because of the big bones.
Well, he had the Homo sapien chin, but then all this other line and the bone structure. Was he in the A00 haplogroup?
Yes.
Nice!
Yes, he was. So this lineage is estimated to break off somewhere between 400,000 and 200,000 years ago. If he has the A00, I'm going to assume closer to 300 to 200,000 years ago. And it is believed that the extinction of this population was caused by the divergent population being unable to migrate.
Oh, right.
Yes. Because there are actually no living descendants of this hominid.
And where were they that they needed to migrate? Like bring that back in?
They needed to be able to get out of Nigeria. And now I don't remember why entirely. There wasn't really anything I could figure out why they didn't migrate through Africa, but for some reason they bottlenecked here.
Huh.
Yeah, I couldn't find, there was no volcano day I could find or anything like that. But for some reason this population bottlenecked.
Interesting.
Yeah. And by 12,000 years ago, they were completely gone, becoming a ghost population. Yeah.
Well, 12,000 years ago does see a lot of really kind of rapid and interesting changes. I mean, that's the end of the Younger Dryas, right?
Yeah. Monsoon season comes back. All sorts of stuff starts changing. The Sahara was actually going through some major climatic events 20,000 years ago. It was drying up. And also,
but then 12,000 years ago, it's wet again, right?
12,000 years ago, the monsoon season starts coming back.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that. So, anyways, next time we bounce back to North Africa, and I'm going to check out the Ibero-Mauritian people of 20,000 to 12,000 years ago. And Liz, what do we have to look forward to next week?
So, as Jordan mentioned, this week has been insane at work. I mean, really insane. So I have no idea what's coming next week. We'll be returning. I'd like to see what I can find in Sudan, in that 20 to 15,000 years ago, perhaps. But I don't want to completely leave South Africa.
Yeah.
I started in South Africa and we got a lot of good stuff from like 1 million years ago. It was amazing stuff, and then right up until 50,000 years ago. So I want to at least take a look at and just kind of maybe touch on a couple of things from South Africa, East Africa, and then into the Sudan in that time. and see what's out there. Maybe pick on a couple of sites and try to tell the story that way. Sudan is a really interesting place because everything that you think of as Egypt, Egypt is its own story, so I don't want to oversimplify it by saying it has all of its roots in Nubia. It doesn't, actually. It's transcontinental, and we will get into that very cool story way later. But you definitely see the birth of many of the ideas that become later sort of foundational, fundamental
so
to
gonna build us
Egypt.
up for the Nubians? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, finally you get the build-up. I've been waiting for you to get the Nubian build-up.
I think that's where we're at. So
yeah,
but I do want to
12,000s right before the Nubians.
I do want to go back and look at some of what's happening in South Africa and South Central Africa. I don't want to leave, like, now that we're not a million years ago, I don't want to leave them out of the conversation. So we'll probably cover some stuff down there, too.
Yeah.
I do want to say, if you like what we are doing on this channel, please just hit the like and subscribe button. That's totally free. It really helps. At some point soon, we will have a Patreon up, and then you guys will be able to get our sound check videos. I know I keep promising that. Like, really, it was a goal this week to set that up. It did not happen. Hopefully next week, fingers crossed. And we're also going to be working on some video editing stuff. For now, we'll still be here Friday nights for a while. After we get a little bit better at video editing, we might be moving our time to give ourselves some editing time. But, we'll see. We'll play it by ear. And feel free to drop comments, make suggestions. If you've got a topic in history, like we're on this project and we're having a lot of fun with it, but if you've got a topic that you would specifically like us to cover, we are also happy to take a break from this and cover something that interests you in particular. Love to do that for you guys.
Be so fun.
Love to go on a journey with you. Like, subscribe, share. Now, our New Year's resolution was to have 100 subscribers by December 2025. I love how you wrote 2025. This is great. 20205.
Really?
You did.
No, I did not.
You did.
Oh my god, I did.
You did. We're currently at 32 wonderful subscribers. I can't believe it. It's only February. Thank you all so much. Really, this is amazing. We are having a ton of fun. We are glad that you guys are having a ton of fun. Next week we're gonna wander around Africa even more and discover even more cool stuff. And we're just gonna keep, we really want to make sure to give enough time to all the, if there's any great, there's many great wrongs in history, but definitely one of them is just erasing the African continent. Again and again, people gloss over it. They're like, yay, cool stuff happened in Africa. Okay, moving on to Mesopotamia. And we do not want to do that. So we're going to take
way too much fun in Africa.
We are having so much fun. This has been a wonderful journey. So I don't know if it's going to be one more episode each or two more episodes each. I promise we are moving both forward in time and we'll eventually leave the continent, but we're going to give everything its due.
I have enough that I could move on and be able to leave things open to be like, oh, hey, this links with a section that I mentioned here, down here. I left a lot of my stories open-ended, where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to return here and 6,000 years ago.
Right. So
I left a lot of my stories open for comeback spots.
Yeah, and we'll even when we do leave the continent, we'll be coming back around again and again. I am also eager to get to Paleolithic South America and Paleolithic North America.
Oh, I can't wait.
And,
This
there's
summer
just...
we're talking about going to visit a Paleolithic
Oh, yeah,
North
we found that
American
there was
site.
a Paleolithic site here in
There's
Oregon.
6 here in our area, and we're planning on at least visiting one.
In our state.
In our area.
Yeah, in the state of Oregon where we are. So we're hoping this summer to take some camping trips, maybe get a tour. We don't know what's actually open and available for like people to looky-loo or not.
Yeah,
but
we're gonna
find out.
Hopefully, do a live on, not a live, but an on location special.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. If we can, we have.
If we can, it's a goal.
It is. So thank you so much again for joining us. I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend.
And happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month.
Bye.
Live long and prosper. Oh, I can do it from here now. I love that. I love that so much.